Welcome back. It's episode 28 of Where the Yellows Walk. This week, of course, it's reviewing of the transfer deadline window. How did the Yellows do? What's our gradings on the performance in the boardroom? Plus, we're also reviewing quickly the Burnley result. You can skip ahead because we know it's old ground, but lots of people are frustrated with Phillips. Why? Sam and Connor are here to give us their views on that. Who's the worst ever Oxford United manager? And because it's Valentine's Day, we're talking about how our team first fell in love with the Yellows. And we've got Connor and Sam back with us. I'm also delighted that we've got James from the Swiss Yellow account on Twitter, which I'm sure lots of you follow, and another god on Twitter in terms of Oxford opinions. We've got Alfie joining us as well. How are you, Alfie?
Very good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And James, good to have you on with us.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for the invite.
Lovely. Let's crack on with it then, shall we then, Sam? Why are people fed up of Phillips?
Because obviously he came in with this, massive resume, a very experienced player, and it seems that whenever he's on the ball, he does his most to lose it. It's interesting with Matt Phillips because obviously when he first came in, I think Conrad had a discussion before that we thought, okay, maybe he's going to be a player, bring on in the late stage of the game when we're looking to see out a result. And his experience, that know-how will get us through, but it really hasn't proved that.
I don't want to share some tweets from the game because it's 7 days ago now, but there were quite a lot, Connor, of people saying, look, good effort from the lads. We didn't disgrace ourselves, but Phillips was just awful. This was one of them. Pete says, don't get me wrong, we deserve to lose against Burnley, but if our game plan was to stay in the game at 1-0 and give it a go at the end, then in the last 10 minutes, that we were absolutely pitiful, messing around between defenders and coming. Phillips was awful as ever. And similar one here, bringing Phillips on when you're chasing a goal rather than your record signing is quite something. He can't beat the man with the ball or with a run. Matos was quality mind. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah, as Sam was saying, when Phillips came in, we all thought that he had this pedigree behind him and that he would bring that experience and have that championship head on him. I think in the first game he had against Norwich, he looked okay, he looked tidy, and then he's had his injury, and it was something that we all knew that it would be a high-risk signing given his injury record. It wasn't that great at West Brom, and that was what we were being warned by West Brom fans. And I don't think that it's any coincidence that his best game of the season came against a League One side, and at that, a team that's in the lower echelons of League One. And if we're being completely honest, that's probably where his playing ability is now, given what his age is and what he used to be being regularly in the Premier League. It's just how football works, unfortunately. So come the end of the season, I don't think that Phillips will be at Oxford, I hope.
How mean. Come on, it's Valentine's week. Let's show some love. Cheers for that. James John says, in the Burnley game, we didn't disgrace ourselves. It could have been worse. I thought Matoff was decent. Needed more going forward. Looked tired. Unbeaten run has come to an end, unfortunately. Let's go again next Tuesday. And by the time this goes out, it will, of course, be that derby game. Let's talk about Matos, though, for a little bit. James, how impressive were you by him?
His cameos so far have been really impressive. There's lots of energy, but there's also a kind of attacking viability there that he's shown. He's shown a kind of a side of a game we've not seen. We either get a kind of robust player like Alex Gorian, who likes to dive in and get stuck in and the fans love him, or we get the more skillful player who seems to play for maybe 16 or 17 minutes in a game and flounce around for the rest. Matos seems like someone who can do both. Going to Burnley, while it's kind of frustrating where we lose to our promotion rivals all the time, we only seem to be beating the kind of relegation teams, but we'll get there. It showed a big difference. I went away to Leeds and went away to Sunderland, and then watching the Burnley game, it's different. However, I have to caveat that with I'm not really sure Burnley are as good as Leeds and Sunderland from an attacking point of view. They kind of just took the foot off the gas, and I don't know if that helped our players. But Matos definitely, I think Matos should start next game instead of Rodriguez, personally.
All right. Cheers for that, James. Welcome to the show, Alfie. I've got the manager to talk to you about, if that's okay, because he has won the Manager of the Month award. Who?
Yeah, deservedly, I think.
Absolutely. The winning run has come to an end, but of all the managers in January, he definitely deserved it. He said about the game, it was a collective performance, it's a collective effort. It's an opportunity for me to thank all the staff that have worked so hard. What's impressed you the most, Alfie, about what he's done?
With how he's come into it and done so well straight away, I think, like, you know, getting rid of Des, how the way the club did it, it was going to upset fans, me included. But really, it's been a breath of fresh air, really. But I just think it's good how he's come in and got on straight away and got the best out of the players he can and brought in the players he wants to. So
yeah. Is he tactically more astute than Des was?
I think so. Yeah.
There's a mid-game understanding of the game.
I think he can turn games around more than Des could. Really, you know, he got more of an impact, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Des would make a really good, or will continue to make really good international manager.
Yeah.
I think for running a national team, running a squad, and just being a tactical genius, that's very much Des's thing. Whereas Gary Rowett got into the muck and weeds of the Championship and has kind of sorted out the squad. I think they're two very different managers, but yeah, was a shock when the club made that change. But
yeah,
I apologise for my sweary tweets at them.
It was the right change, I think. When you look back on it, I think it got definitely the right decision in the end.
All right. Let's move gear then, shall we? 2 games then this week, 2 massive games, Connor, in actual fact, isn't it? With Derby and Pompey at the weekend. I'm not sure Derby will have made any managerial changes before your games. That could go in your favour. But how do you see these 2 games going?
I think, given what's happened over the weekend at both clubs, respectively, so Derby getting rid of Paul Warne. If Paul Warne was still in charge, ironically, it's going to be a harder game at Derby with Paul Warne not in the dugout than it would have been if he was in the dugout. With the manager gone, and by the time this goes out, I expect John Eustace to be announced tomorrow morning. That will galvanise Pride Park, and that's going to be an absolutely raucous environment to go into, so that'll be tough. And then Portsmouth as well, that's going to be another tough one, because given by the highlights and stats from their game at Bramall Lane, they should have absolutely battered. Well, they did batter Sheffield United for a large part of that game and should have won by about 3 or 4 goals. And a player we all know very well put in what looked like what should have been a man of the match performance. Yeah. But the only reason he didn't get one was because Portsmouth weren't on the end of the right result, it seems. And Portsmouth have had an uptick in form away from home, although they're not getting the points that they deserved. And it would be very Oxford United that they get the points that they deserve at Oxford United.
Yeah.
Yes, your old buddies from League One this week, isn't it, Sam? But I mean, if I'd said to you at the start of the season, at the start of February, that of the 3 teams, you'd be the highest in the league, you'd have taken that, wouldn't you?
I would have taken it if you said we'd be the highest of the 3 teams when it comes to May. But I mean, it's very funny how football can change in a week, Mark. Because literally last week you and I said, there's no signs of Warne leaving, and he's gone on Friday. It's an incredible appointment. Looks like if they're going to get John Eustace, obviously, I know obviously ownership problems at Blackburn, but to bring him down into a relegation scrap is a bit interesting. But yeah, like Connor said, it would be very us to go into 2 games that, start of the week we were thinking, we're looking more confident about these, and then maybe not end up how we thought it would go. But look, as Connor said, their away form isn't great, Portsmouth, even though their performances have been picking up. We've got to use that to our advantage. And I think James is right in terms of using Alex Matos again in more advanced areas, because he looked really good in that 10 role, having 2 more robust men behind him in Brannigan and Volks. It's going to be a proper scrap in that midfield area against especially Portsmouth at Grenoble.
Okay. Cheers. So of course, we're going to review both these games next week, so join us for that. Let's talk about the transfer window, because since we last spoke to you all, it's shut. So how did we do overall? Let's have a quick look at the photograph. I mean, they stuck them between 2 containers. I mean, this is just well done, admin, for this. Alfie, overall, how would you rate the transfer window in a word?
Solid.
Yeah.
For me, anyway, yeah.
The overall reaction online was pretty much the same. Who in particular that you've seen so far are you most excited about?
I don't know. I mean, I think Bradshaw, because Harris hasn't read the league very well. I think Bradshaw again knows it better. Like Rowett, really knows it better, and I think he knows how to play it. Well, just knows it better, really. But I think Bradshaw can score goals with us. I think that's what we needed, and a proper striker back in this side.
Yeah, we're not going to get into any more Mark Harris conversations this week, Sam. I promise. We've done it for weeks on end. Let's look at the full list then, James. First of all, let's talk about the outgoings. Any surprises on there? Has Lewis Sibley had a chance, by the way, do you think? Has he not been treated well enough?
Well, yeah, I don't know who Tobias Brennan going to Wigan is. That's Owen Dale it's supposed to be, I think.
I think this is from Sky, so you can't blame them. Bless them. They only take your subscriptions and get stuff wrong every single week.
I think Carl Edwards was just a kind of contract ending, and I think he'll do well to stay injury-free at Stevenage. It's Goodwin and Owen Dale I'll be watching at Wigan, really to see if Goodwin can progress. But the one player of ours who is on loan in League One is, oh, crikey, at Leyton Orient, who played
Curry.
at the weekend against...
Curry.
Yeah, Curry, sorry. Name went. Who played against Man City, and he's the one we're watching. It's new for us, this, watching lower divisions, watching our players on loan. Usually we were the ones getting players in from the champ. So this is all new and exciting to see how they can develop.
Connor, who do you think we're going to be sat here in May heralding as the saviour of Oxford season from these 5 names that have come in?
Well, throughout those 5, 6 that's there, Hellick has been my pick of best signing of the window. That first game he came in, he looked a little bit shaky with the first 5 minutes, but as I said in a previous video, because he reportedly didn't have any training with the squad, and he just fitted right in. Every game he's come in, he's been an absolute presence, not only at the back, but he also an absolute presence at the front. His stride on his legs has been absolutely what we needed while Elliot Moore has been out, and now the depth that we have in the back line, especially with our centre half, has been absolutely unbelievable, especially when we get the lad back from Leicester. Even if he's got a couple months in him, it's going to be well needed come the end of the season. It's the way that the league and the results and the fixtures are shaping up. It's going to be a tough end, and that depth we had at the back is going to be very, very pivotal, especially to how Rowett plays and liking it to keep tight at the back.
Brilliant. Okay, Sam, overall for you, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10?
I'd say I might push it to an 8, just given the, going out that Mikala Hellick is obviously the standout, being able to go out and pinch one of, League One's best players, bring him to our football club. As the lads have said, this is something we're used to happening to us in, many, many moons past. He's obviously been, as Connor said, a very, very important addition, and we're already starting to fall in love with him. Stan Mills obviously coming back, bit of a nostalgic option, but the fact of the matter is he's a highly talented player, offers something different, and a very much one that maybe not for the rest of the season, maybe for the going forward, but there's depth there. We've added experience in the Championship, which is what we needed. I'll go probably 7.5, I think, for the overall ranking.
Okay, all right. We'll come back and ask you in a month when you've seen them all play, which is the fairest thing to do. Right, thank you very much for that. Do drop us a like and a subscribe if you haven't yet already done so. It's 20 minutes a week of Oxford United chat. We know there's a couple of other Oxford podcasts out there which you can listen to, but this is 20 minutes of friendly chat. Thank you for helping support with nearly 100 subscribers, which for 4 months going is pretty good. Can you push us and get us to 100? That'd be amazing. Right then, the worst ever Oxford 11 is what we've been focusing on for the last couple of weeks. Connor and Sam have put together their thoughts. So let's have a look at what they did. They put Jack Stevens in goal, Brandon Fleming, Stuart Finley, Joe Grayson, and Anderson in defence. Last week we had Sam on his own putting the midfield together, which was Diaz, McGowan, and Courtney Pitt, and then we have Tyler Smith and Mehmeti up front. So, James, looking at this, I know you've had nothing to do with it, but would this side certainly be relegated?
In which division, right? National League. I think they might just scrape survival, but yeah, it's a team of a certain age. There's no Paul Key and Mike Salmon who let in a vast number of goals in one game against Birmingham. So yeah, it's not a great example, right?
Okay. Let's pick a captain then. So Alfie, we'll give this to you to do here. Of the players there that you've heard of and seen, who's the worst in your experience of watching the others?
I'll tell you who I'd put in there. For me, I'd put Phillips in there easily, but I have to say, the worst I've watched out of them, I haven't watched many, I'll admit, but Stuart Findlay, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think lots of people would agree with you there. Connor, who would you pick? Who's the one player in there you would never pay money again to see in a yellow and navy shirt?
Joe Grayson.
Don't take your time and think about it, Connor. Whatever you do. So yeah, Sam.
It's really difficult because obviously there's some stinkers in there. I'll go with Tyler Smith just because the money we paid for him on loan, how few appearances he made. And we said before, it's not his fault that he was between two managers, but for how little impact he had on our football club, I think I have to go Tyler Smith.
Okay, all right.
I think I'd pay money to watch Mehmeti and Van Kessel every week. I don't know where. And I think didn't Mehmeti turn up and was pictured like with AK-47s and things like that? It was all a bit odd.
Right.
Yeah.
You couldn't make it up, could you? It needs a manager though, please, if that's okay. We're looking for the worst ever Oxford manager. Next week we're doing the worst ever Oxford kits, of which I know there's been a few. Some of you might be wearing them right now. Looks of it. We'll do that. We'll do that next week. Alfie, in your shortish time supporting this club, who's the worst manager that you can recall?
Well, my time's a bit limited, but for managers I know of, who was manager when they went down to the conference? Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
It bounced between a couple of that. Yeah, I think Jim Smith saw us down, but
didn't we have like 4 managers that season?
Something like that.
3 or 4, wouldn't it?
Didn't go well.
My lifetime, I was born in 2008, so I really can't. My options are limited here. So
yeah, it's fair enough.
But,
Sam,
yeah.
I mean, for the most part, we've had very long tenured managers, and I think obviously I'm 25, so in my time supporting this football club, it's been mostly decent on the ones I can remember. I'm going to go with Pep Clisette. He started really well, and we thought this is going to be great, and then it went downhill very, very quickly. He was sacked in January, and then the KR era began. Pep Clisette for me.
Okay, Connor.
Yeah, so same as Sam. I'm 27, so I've been supporting this club since 2006 when they started in the conference. So I'm going to go from there. When you talk about short period managers during that time, there's one that doesn't even come close. Gary Waddock, when he was appointed by one of our previous owners after Wilder left, and there was no manager for about 3 months. The poor bloke had 8 games in charge, won 1, lost 7. A team that was that should have got top 3 that season, but ended up finishing 8th or 9th in League 2. They got taken out when we had a new ownership in Appleton come through.
All right, James, teach these youngsters the real meaning of bad managers.
Yeah, well, Clotet was not only bad, but he was mad. And he also had this thing where it was his agent would argue with people on Twitter, and you always knew it was Pep. And he would argue about tactics and all sorts of weird things. And he had a very strange way of signing players. But anyway, the worst manager I ever encountered was David Kemp back in the Manor days, as we got relegated out of League 1 into League 2. And I remember sitting behind the dugout at the time. There was this new young player called Chris Hackett, and he wouldn't play him, and we were you just get so many people like put Hackett on, put Hackett on. He put Chris Hackett on for the first time. Chris Hackett runs past 4 players and scores a worldie. And I remember turning round to David Kemp and going, see, and he turned round and flicked the V's. All right. And you're just like, brilliant. That's the worst manager. I think when we look back at that era, it wasn't a great time to be operating a kind of management of our club, as it was imploding in amongst so much trouble. But yeah, David Kemp gives me shivers, and people still shout Kemp out on the stand still today.
Love these stories. Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Finally, then, it's Valentine's Day this week, so we're asking Connor and Sam, our regulars, how they first fell in love with Oxford, if that's okay. Who's responsible? Connor, what age were you, and what was your first game?
So my old man's responsible. He was a regular at the Manor. So my first game was in 2006 when we were newly in the Blue Square Premier, as it was then. First game was against, I think it was Eastbourne Borough, 1-0 penalty, and it was by the player that made me fall in love, a bloke who goes by the name of Yemi Odobe.
Lovely. Sam.
So just like Connor, I've got my old man to blame for this. He was a regular at the Manor, and works as part of the safety team on match days for the club now. So I really had zero choice. It was. It's anytime we have like a game that makes your heart speed up a bit, I always walk out of the ground and said, "This is your fault, by the way. I'm gonna go early." So I can't remember kind of my very first game. It was like kind of somewhere in the Blue Square Prem days, but obviously kind of the one that always kind of my first proper memory of Oxford is that playoff final. Just being there with 30,000 other Oxford fans, and Bino. It was the thing about Bino was the fact that not only is obviously our record goal scorer, not just the fact that he scored against the Scum twice and told Di Canio where to go, but it's just the fact that he was one of them strikers that would just chuck himself at every ball because he was going to be always going to be a nightmare to opposition defences.
Good shouts. James, an Oxford fan through and through from birth, yeah?
Well, no. My dad came to this country in the 60s, and he's not a football fan. He's an ice hockey player, right? So that's where the Swiss comes from. And my grandparent in Switzerland was heavily into football, supported Servette FC in Geneva, went to almost all the games at the 1954 World Cup. But football kind of was never a thing. Until Oxford won the Milk Cup, and all my mates from school were going, and I ended up going to Oxford United versus Middlesbrough, and I think in about 89 or 90, where Paul Simpson scored a couple, Bernie Slaven got some for Borough, and I was up at the back of the London Road as a little teenager, just spot starting, shall we say, and it was amazing, and the camaraderie and the people I've met over the years, and got involved with trying to help the club in 99 and onwards, and trying to help get the stadium built. And it's just brilliant. There is nothing else like the support you get from being involved in a football club. Everybody, all the supporters are amazing. It's a brilliant family down in Oxford. Everybody knows each other. It's great.
Brilliant. Alfie, you are son to Oxford fans?
No, Man United fans. I should say, but my first Oxford game was 2017, the Checkatrade Trophy final.
Wow.
Which was then was it Circum that scored, I think, the late one back. That was the first goal I ever watched. For players that made me fall in love, I don't really know. I haven't really got one I can sort of pinpoint. I sort of followed Oxford for a bit and started going even more, and ended up getting a season ticket, and sort of been going ever since. And yeah, so
sound
not as bad. The worst story of all you lot, I must admit, but You know,
You wait till 40 years time, Alfie, and you're telling someone, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking about the new Martian signing, who's 7 foot
That's
tall,
true, yeah.
and who's come along, yeah. And they go, "Oh, you still signed humans back then, did you? Oh, that was cute." You wait,
Really
mate.
good. Okay. No one's got Swindon relatives then, or parents, or brothers, sisters?
thankfully
now?
not.
No,
I spent an
okay.
afternoon managing a shop in Swindon and threw someone out for wearing a Swindon shirt. That was it.
Lovely. Right. Thanks for regaling your stories of love for Oxford. Let us know in the comments what yours are, and we'd love to hear and read some of them out. Next week, good luck against Derby. I think you might need it. I think the tails are up. Now Paul Warner's gone, sadly. And, of course, we'll see you in 7 days' time to review how Portsmouth has gone as well. Big week for Oxford. Fingers crossed it goes well. See you in 7 days to talk about it all.